Welcome to the first episode of Africa's Blockchain Breakdown. My name is Gideon Greaves, and I'm the Managing Director of CVVC Africa. Next to me is the legendary Kino Kamis.
Legendary. I've never, ever been accused of that, Gideon, but thank you very much for that. I'll take it. I'll have to work up to, living up to that status. But it's an absolute pleasure being here. I will say this off the bat. I know very little about Bitcoin.
Lies.
Well, I know less than you, but I sure as heck absolutely love blockchain. So I will ask a couple of silly questions throughout the show, but I also want to bring in the perspective of people who are learning about Bitcoin, learning about blockchain and the use cases.
Well, that's it, Kino. That's what the show's about. We're going to keep it broad. We're going to cover some global topics around what's happening in the market. We're going to dive deep onto topics and entrepreneurs and how they're disrupting the market here in Africa utilizing blockchain. We have some other blockchain lovers that will be jumping on the show with us later in the episode. And let's get into it, Kino. So we're going to start off with our newsflash. Kino, there is a lot going on in the market. It's hard to summarize it in 3 minutes. So we've got a couple of points that's been interesting to us. Of course, there's a lot going on north of Africa. And what's interesting is how Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies have been being utilized. And we've seen that Hamas has been utilizing cryptocurrencies to bypass sanctions to get funding into Palestine. So I think it goes back to that argument many years ago about blockchain being utilized for
nefarious
transactions.
Yeah.
There was the Silk Road incident, of course, when cryptocurrencies were utilized to buy drugs effectively online. But in the same breath, what else has happened in that scenario is that because of the transparency of blockchain, forensic analysts have been able to track exactly where these funds are going, where they're coming from, where they're going to, and they've been able to bypass those funds.
And the company involved, by the way, very importantly, latest news around that said that they didn't deny that Hamas obviously used the facilities to get the money in, but they said the amount mentioned in the media is not anywhere close to. It's much less than what is quoted in the media. But we'll find out more about that. And this whole segment is to just help you. You're sitting around the dinner table, you want to have chats around crypto. We want to give you the facts so that you can share it with others as well. Now, moving on to a guy, I'm sure you'd love your daughter to bring him home. His name is Sam Bankman-Fried, who'll probably have to change his surname to Sam Bankman Incarcerated. Why? Well, this bright spark is accused of engaging in widespread fraud. This is according to federal authorities. So what did he get up to? Well, there's a 13-page criminal indictment. And some of the things that he's done, this guy's he's a real altar boy. Wire fraud against customers and lenders. This is what he is alleged to have done. He has not been found guilty, right? So that's important to remember. And then the other thing is conspiracy to defraud the United States and violate campaign finance laws. So he was giving money to the campaigns of both GOP and the Democrats. And you know what? The problem with sitting on the fence is that it can get really sore sometimes. But anyway, he started testifying this week, and it was an unusual move. There were no jurors. Normally, you have your jurors up front, but the judge just wanted to look and listen to his testimony to see if it would be admissible. A real upstanding member of society.
He's given such a bad name to the blockchain industry, and in fact, as one of our one of the ladies that we're going to be interviewing today, Monica Singer, she has a huge passion for decentralization. So she will argue that FTX has nothing to do with blockchain, other than the fact that they are an exchange, a centralized exchange. So the bad thing about this whole rondavel with our dear friend Sam Bankman-Fried is that he has really affected the outlook on blockchain, on cryptocurrency, and on the industry as a whole. So there's a lot of eyes looking at this trial very closely, and it could act as a benchmark on a lot of new regulations that get put into place as well.
You know, we sit at, I'm one of the co-founders of Innovation City in Cape Town, by the way. So we have a lot of people filtering through our space, and a lot of people are wanting to learn about technologies, get to understand, you know, the what you can do with Bitcoin, for example, or other coins. They're trying to understand how you can use blockchain. But as soon as you mention blockchain to some of these people, and I don't blame them, they go, oh no, that's Bitcoin. We don't like it. There's a lot of scams around it. And that's the problem. That is the problem. It's the perception. Anyway, I think we need to move on to some other stuff. You know, when we talk about cryptocurrencies, lots of people use it. I've got friends who have millions tied up in it, right? And they've taken a long-term view on it. But if you compare it to general fiat currency usage, there's a long way to go. You can't walk to the corner store, right, and go and get candy and whatever you're going to eat tonight. You can't get that. But things are changing, and there's some big brands behind it. For example, I mean, if you are a Ferrari fan, one day when we make money, hey, one day, okay, customers can now buy Ferrari paying with Bitcoin, Ethereum, and USDC. And then Ferrari, I mean, they're so kind of them. Ferrari will not impose any additional fees or markups for customers paying in cryptocurrency. Isn't that lovely?
Well, it shows you who are all the buyers of crypto and who's holding crypto, right?
Exactly
if,
right.
If one of the key reasons to utilize this asset class is to buy Ferraris, but what's the other one that's been popular?
Well, I know you're a Swifty fan, right?
Of course,
so,
who isn't?
You know, he comes in and is like sort of bobbing to Taylor Swift. Well, if you are a Swifty, you can certainly use cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Dogecoin. There's also Shiba Inu. I've heard about that recently. Don't judge me. To buy tickets to this eagerly awaited Taylor Swift The Eras tour. Now, people who've kind of seen this before just said it's just her singing back to back to back. But I mean, if you're a Swifty fan, you don't
like
mind.
Well, as I said before, it shows you who are the let's say the target market or the key users of crypto, Bitcoin, blockchain. We've got Gen Zs on the Taylor Swift side and myself. And then we've got everyone that's gone to the moon buying Ferraris, right? And that's who's utilizing this. But we want to see we want to see more widespread adoption. You know, we want to be able to see scenarios where you can walk into a corner store and buy a loaf of bread utilizing cryptocurrency. And I think we're getting there, and we've invested into some startups that are penetrating or utilizing these use cases. So we're excited to see where that goes. But it has been a good week overall for crypto and blockchain. Of course, the sentiment is changing. Bitcoin has been trading at $28,000 for months. It's been what usually is quite an exciting asset class. There's a lot of volatility. There hasn't been that in the past few months. It's been quite a boring market. But finally, we've broken that key resistance level, and we've gone past $30,000. Bitcoin now trading at just over $34,000. So, of course, on the back of that, all the altcoins have been popping. All the meme coins, like you mentioned, Shibu and of course Pepe have all been popping as well. So it's good in the sense that the sentiment is changing. What we did also see was Cointelegraph, of course, one of the more well-known and incredible, reputable publishers out there on news, all things blockchain and crypto, put out an article accidentally saying that the much-awaited ETF, blockchain or Bitcoin rather, ETF has been approved. What happened straight after that is that the price of Bitcoin popped by $2,000. So it just shows you that everyone is waiting for this ETF to get approved. I would not be shorting Bitcoin right now. The ETF will get approved, in my opinion. It's just a matter of when. And of course, not financial advice.
Stupid question time. For those who don't know what ETF is, we love our acronyms, don't we? So what in the heck is ETF?
Well, essentially, what the ETF is going to do, rather instead of what it is it's going to give access to a lot more inflows are going to come from the market, on the back of the ETF. So you've got your financial advisor that you sit with once a month, twice a year, whatever it may be, and he's telling you how to diversify your portfolio, put X into a mutual fund, put Y into this. The ETF is just going to bring a lot more institutional and smart money into the ecosystem, which means that your next time you sit down with your financial broker, he might say, Kino, I think you should be looking into Bitcoin. they now have a place to be a custody of this asset class, so they can start putting it out there to their clients. Let's diversify your portfolio, put 1 or 2% into Bitcoin, and that's, as you can imagine, what that might do to price action in the asset class and in the whole space, and just bringing more credibility to the space.
And it's also going to make sure that the person who gives you that advice will these days become a lot younger. But it is time for us. You've now been updated. You've heard about the latest news. You can now have those conversations with your mates in the office. But right now, it's time for us to do a deep dive.
Alrighty, Kino. So we're doing our first deep dive. We're moving deeper into Africa's blockchain revolution. We're going to be interviewing two co-founders, the co-founders of Mazuma. They started off building a product that focuses on mobile money and international remittance. They've now added on to their suite of products by they've got this new product called Mazuma GPT, which is essentially allowing developers to utilize an AI-powered platform to develop smart contracts a lot more efficiently and quickly. So Nii and Kofi, I'm looking forward to seeing you on screen in a moment, and looking forward to chatting to you guys and how you've been disrupting the space. First of all, let's just talk about your transition from mobile money and international remittance. I know it's not a pivot because you still have these services and products within your ecosystem, within the Mazuma suite of products. But talk to us a little bit about where you guys came from and where you're going.
Okay, thank you guys. Nice to be on the show once again. We are honored to be part of the maiden edition, so thank you for that. So quickly jumping into it, my name is Kofi Jemfi. I'm one of the co-founders of Mazuma. I'm here with
Nii Hussain. I'm also a co-founder of Mazuma.
Okay, perfect. So in terms of our journey, at Mazuma, we really do love building developer tools for both enterprises and for developers, which is hobbyists across the world. Our focus started out in, should I say, the mobile money space, as Gideon rightly said, and gradually we've expanded this pool. Our focus has always been from, expanding from a niche market and expanding into a much more global space. So should I say Mazuma GPT, latest offering, very exciting, is one of the products that we look at from a little bit of a different perspective. Rather than building in Africa for Africa, we are building in Africa, but for the world. And already we've seen that in our database, we've seen that in our user base. We already have users from 80 countries across the world all utilizing Mazuma GPT's technology. We're excited to share more about how it works, what goes under the bricks with you as we discuss more. Thank you very much.
I really like that, Kofi, by the way, because I've been a big fan of that. And whenever I'm on a platform talking about the continent, everybody keeps talking to us about median ages of 20. They're talking to us about as if we're a market that they want to sell into. And I said, listen, if you want to work with Africa, you need to help us develop skills so that we can help build the world. And that is exactly what you're doing. But how do you move from remittance to Mazuma GPT? I mean, I'm still trying to figure out how, what actually led to this. Were you guys just having a cup of coffee one day and deciding, hey man, maybe we should try this? What was the process that actually led to this? And then give us a little bit of insight. Explain this to me like a 17-year-old, right? What does Mazuma GPT actually do?
Okay, perfect. That's my job here today, to dumb it down as much as possible for every user. So in terms of our transition, understanding it properly, as I said, our focus has always been on building developer tools. So developer tools comes in different, should I say, shapes, forms, and sizes. With the mobile money space, it was primarily with building APIs to allow developers to be able to collect payments online. with what we did with remittances, it was to allow these same APIs that we built to be used by large-scale remittance providers to be able to disperse money across, the region in sub-Saharan Africa, and to be able to allow them to have backend systems to support what they do. Now we are extending this capability even further, still focused on developers, still focused on enterprises, but now with code generation tools. So now the eureka moment is, I think, the important question. In doing our business, we do a lot of, should I say, insights, feedback from our customers, and also try to predict trends in the global markets that we see are, should I say, very relevant. Nexusing that with our skill sets that we have internally. I think I'll let Nee come in here at this point, because Nee was one of the strong proponents of us pushing in this direction. He has a very strong background in AI as well, and this led to us forming Mazumi GPT as a product.
Yeah, so this comes in where we realized that there was a huge skill gap in the smart contract development space. You have a lot of people creating smart contracts, but then there's a lot of bugs here and there, vulnerabilities. You see people doing a lot of vulnerability rug pulls and all these things happening. And the space needs some sanity. And we of course realized that there's a skill gap. How can we use our research in-house, which is researching on large language models and AI, to accelerate this growth? And this is why we created Mazuma GPT. So in a nutshell, Mazuma GPT is a large language model, or a form of AI, which has been taught or fine-tuned to write Solidity or smart contract code very efficiently. So it's like having an AI and teaching the AI how to write Solidity code, so you don't have to do everything from scratch. You prompt the model and it writes all the code for you. So basically making development more seamless, more efficient, and more cost productive and cost efficient for everyone on the African space and even the global space. As Kofi mentioned, you have seen users from all across the world, users using this to build their products. And even for building their products, majority of them are even moving from Web 2 logic into Web 3. We see people using this to tokenize medical records, logistics, things that you see in the real world scenarios being used to write this code on Mazuma GPT for Web 3.
Oh, that's impressive.
I think we're at this stage now within the ecosystem where we're trying to bridge this gap between Web 2 and Web 3. And what you guys are doing is definitely excelling that process of adoption. What I often see, and what I like the example that I like to use that shows sort of where we are within this revolution is a comparison between the legendary Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. So the technology is very disruptive. It's very new. The early adopters are, of course, going to be the Steve Wozniaks of this world. They're going to be the engineers. They're going to be the coders. And on that front, when they're adopting this technology and they're trying to utilize it to build innovative, disruptive applications, they're not necessarily the easiest to use. The models are not necessarily the most commercially viable. Yeah. But as we see the space starting to mature, you're starting to see the Steve Jobs of the world with these commercial brains partnering up with the Steve Wozniaks of this world. And you're seeing these applications are a lot easier to use. And I think that's what you guys are doing as well, is someone that understands the power of smart contracts, but doesn't necessarily know the best way to execute them, or a way to just do it a lot faster, can utilize Mazuma GPT to do this. What's the feedback been so far from the users out there? What's the challenges been?
Yeah, so I'm spot on with that, Gideon. Bridging that gap is so important because that is literally what causes innovation. So in terms of the feedback that we've got from users so far, it's been exciting. Lots of, I would like this to add, can it do this now? Can it do this now? So we keep on improving the model constantly to be able to do even better and better things. Another use case that we realized was one of our biggest partners in doing this is Cardano. They're also investors in our business as well. And for them, they wanted to build such a strong smart contracts platform. But guess what? Building with an application or a programming language which powers their smart contract platform called Plutus is one of the hardest things to do. Even the guys who built it don't like doing it. So being able to have a tool that you can rapidly give to a lot of developers, they go in there, insert their logic, and then it generates the code for them. It's amazing. And just to go a little bit into your question, Kino, breaking it down very simply, how does this work? Is very simple. So we have a platform which you sign up for. You sign in with your details, everything. Then we have something called a prompt guide. So the prompt guide is kind of like an instruction manual on how to query an AI to understand what you are trying to make him understand. So it has to be very legible. There shouldn't be ambiguity in your statement. You can't say words that mean two things because he doesn't know what you're trying to say. It should be very straightforward, be succinct. You should explain what kind of programming language that you want to generate this in. And then after you put that logic there, it spits out the code for you within 5 minutes. Simple.
Unbelievable. And that's, I mean, I'm just generally, right? We've been having conversations around how do you make things more inclusive, because not everybody has the aptitude to learn, all these tech stacks and the codes that run them. They don't. But if you can teach people how to innovate, how to use their eyes and their ears, how to realize that there's a challenge, what to do when you realize there's a challenge, how do you find out more about the people who are experiencing those challenges, and then you get to a solutions phase. With no code or very little code, it's easier for more people to get involved and for us to drive an innovation revolution across the continent. Yes. And that is what excites me about this.
Yes, 100%. So what we realize is there are literally a lot of guys on the sidelines who are like, we want to jump into the pool. But when we jump into the pool, how do we swim?
Exactly.
So Mazuma GPT comes in and says, guys, don't worry, jump. When you go in, just use this, and then you'll be able to swim. Yeah.
I like that. I really like it. I think it's great. I think it's a wonderful business. As a matter of fact, what we'll do on the show is, this is not the first time we'll have you on. I think we want to track your success. And I think the whole idea behind the show is to introduce you to more people that can also take you from strength to strength as a business. So I take if I was wearing a hat, I'd be taking it off to both of you. But a phenomenal business.
All right. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, gentlemen. And this is what I love about what we're doing at the moment. No matter where you're sitting, you could be sitting in the United States, sitting in South Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, wherever you're sitting, Congo B. Hopefully, we can actually inspire you to get involved in these things, Gideon, I think. But time for us to move on to a bit of EdTech. Now, EdTech is something I'm also passionate about. And I'm going to put my bugbear out there up front. My challenge with EdTech is it's great to have technology, but if we use that technologies to continue driving industrial revolution type education, then we have a challenge. So what we need to do, just in my humble opinion, you might be thinking I'm talking the biggest load of codswallop, and that's perfectly fine, right? The technology must also be the thrust, the engine that takes innovative curricula and move that forward. So let's find out a little bit more about Kenyan EdTech, Skiza Education. What's Skiza Education all about? Well, you'll find out.
Yeah, Kino. Well, they've just won a massive prize now, and we're seeing a lot of education platforms getting a lot of funding across Africa now. There's a lot of promotion into, as you said, different EdTech initiatives, from coming out of corporate budgets through to big, large protocol budgets as well. So it's been interesting to notice it. What I have found is that a lot of these educational initiatives, specifically in emerging markets, don't last longer than the funding that they've provided. So they're not sustainable. And we're seeing that a lot from impact initiatives that are providing funding to EdTech solutions, for example, that might necessarily focus too much on their impact side of their business model and not so much on making it commercially viable and sustainable. There has been some challenges there. When the funding gets pulled, the project goes bye-bye.
Goes by. Yeah, exactly.
So now we're seeing a space now where there's a lot of focus on trying to put funding into these initiatives, but making sure that they're commercially viable. So the EdTech space in Africa is very exciting. I think it's got a long way to go. I think there's a big focus from a blockchain perspective to educating Web 2 developers as well as Web 3 developers in Africa. As you can imagine, the bridge between Web 2 and Web 3 is already quite big. So if you have no development skills, but you're an aspiring developer, to skip that Web 2 element is quite challenging. Arguably there needs to be a lot of focus on education from the bottom up. But Kina, we've got a long show. I want to dive into the next interview. We're going to go and interview now Monica Singer. So she is going to be our first industry voice.
There she is. Monica, I'm going to say this to your face, right? What I love about you, I absolutely love the fact that you speak your mind, you speak your truth. And it's one thing to speak one's truth, but one also needs to engage one's brain. And you do that phenomenally well. So it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Gideon, a lot of people might not know who Monica Singer is. So I think maybe
it depends where you're sitting in the world. If you're in South Africa, I think a lot of people know who Monica Singer is. She's a legend in the space, a Bitcoin evangelist, blockchain evangelist, decentralization fanatic. She is the lead to the South African lead to Consensus, which, as we know, is a powerhouse within the space. Earlier this year, Consensus raised $450 million at a $7 billion valuation. So they're doing some really, really exciting things in the space. Most notably are known for a product that we all probably use if we're crypto fanatics, is MetaMask. But Monica, we're really excited to have you on the show. I'm a huge fan of you personally. You're a fiery human being that's really passionate about what you do. It's really exciting to always speak with you. So keen to hear first off what's been happening on your side. What have you been up to lately, and where do you think things are going?
So first of all, thank you for having me. As you know, I love talking, and I love saying the truth, and I love creating the awareness. So for Consensus, I'm in charge of education. I'm a professor at university and also an advocate to tell the world what's truly happening, because there's massive amount of misinformation, like this topic that you were covering on Hamas and, using crypto for nefarious activities. Really, we're using cash for nefarious activities, and the banking system is the one. So, there's so much rubbish going on. And, the SBF trial, also trying to put a black mark on what we do, which is really, he is a crook, and at the end of the day, the truth will be out there, and people will learn not to rely on centralized anything. The word centralized should be like immediately a red flag for absolutely everybody in this space. So that's what I do for Consensus. But the reality is that my whole life, since I'm a little girl, I have been fanatic about doing something in the world that will eliminate corruption. Don't ask me how I became obsessed about this, because it's a long story. But the truth is that if you follow my career, I became a chartered accountant. I was the technical director of the Institute of Chartered Accountants in South Africa for 8 years, setting audit and accounting standards, then worked for the World Bank, then implemented the central Securities Depository in South Africa, which is the back office of the stock market in South Africa. And I ran it for 20 years. And then I read Satoshi's paper. And the rest is history, because once you read Satoshi Nakamoto's paper, Creating Bitcoin, you realize that that is the only way that we will fight corruption in the world. And therefore, I had to leave the castle, as the queen, left the castle, joined the plebs, and now I'm fighting the good fight.
I made a comment earlier about some people not knowing who you are. And the reason why I say that, obviously the people in the know who you are. One of the big things that we want to achieve with the show, Monica, is to bring more people into the circle. Mm-hmm. And, the challenge that I do have is that, people involved in, and this is true for any, industry. People talk in their acronyms, they talk in speak that sounds like another language. How do we create more inclusivity, especially for girls, and especially for girls on the African continent, right? How do we drive more adoption and interest in blockchain, in cryptocurrencies. I find it very difficult, to be honest with you, and it's one of the reasons we spoke about this particular show. How do we bring more people into the know?
So, of course, education, but you know what? I really recommend that you go to any YouTube presentations that I give, and you will see that I'm absolutely obsessed of not using acronyms to explain it in plain language. I'm not a techie, so I don't cover the tech. I cover the philosophy, the values, the strategy, the application. And therefore, once you understand, I give you one example I always give is I always say, do you know that the internet, it's built on technology called TCP/IP? And people say, no, we don't know. I said, you know what? Who cares? Do you send email?
Exactly.
Do you use the internet? So who cares? Don't let the techies take you down that rabbit hole. Because just remember, this was built by the techies. So of course, when they talk, they're going to use their own language, their own confusion. But you know what? If the techies cannot explain it in plain English, then I wonder if they'll truly understand it. So they've created a lot of confusion. So we need to talk plain, and we need to talk about the empowerment, the independence, the liberation that this technology will bring to anybody. And once you tap onto that, then you can go to the girls and say, girls, can we stop thinking that you need to wait for the savior, the husband that is going to take you out of your misery, and empower yourself through education to do what you have to do to be financially independent. And I'm a case in point. I'm financially independent. Don't get me started with my story about divorcing my husband, etc. The point is, you don't need.
We can do that over something stronger.
Don't get me started. So the point is, you don't need the man to come and save you. You can save yourself. MetaMask is completely downloadable from the Apple Store or Google, and then with 100 Rand, you can start using it, and you become your own bank. Never again do you have to phone a bank and show all this information, blah blah blah. Then don't get me started with decentralized finance. So what we need is to encourage the girls to start using this. It's like when you wanted to teach your mother to use Facebook, what did you do? Did you give her a lecture on the technology behind Facebook? Or did you say, here's the app, start playing? Exactly. That's what we want people to do. Start using the technology. It's going to become more user-friendly as we go. And I don't know if you know that now MetaMask also has the fiat crypto on-ramp. You can go and put rands, our fiat currency, into MetaMask and buy crypto stable coins, because I don't know if people know, but you cannot be in this ecosystem using fiat. Fiat will eventually lose its value because, the money printer. So you need to be in a currency that is not deteriorated by a central bank, as we know it's happening around the world.
Yeah, I mean, I think your non-techism is a wonderful thing, because whenever you speak, I heard you speak at the CBBC conference as well, and I was like, I actually understand what you're saying. This is really cool. So we need more people who actually don't understand the tech, but understand use cases and the problems that those particular technologies can solve to get involved. But
well, I think one of the challenges in the space is that it isn't necessarily, and it's changing very quickly, as Monica mentioned, with the fiat on-ramp for MetaMask, but it is difficult to use. And I think that's the argument between centralization and decentralization, is that centralized applications, just because of the nature of how that they're built, they are a lot more user-friendly to onboard yourself onto the application or the service or the product. Decentralized applications like MetaMask, for example, before the fiat on-ramp, you would have to look at different ways through exchanges, for example, to get onto, to get your assets onto MetaMask. But my question, Monica, is where are we in the space between centralization and decentralization? And how long is it going to take for us to move over into more of a decentralized ecosystem?
So what happened with FTX in reality is helping the industry, because now people are saying, whoa, I shouldn't trust. And our motto, don't trust, verify. Go for decentralization, go for self-custody, and also to explain to everybody, please do not leave your custody with an exchange. In traditional finance, You know that's illegal. The stock exchange cannot do custody. We have separation of duties for a purpose. People really, let's actually don't throw the baby with the bathwater as to the controls that were built in traditional finance. They should be transferred to the new Web3 that has already embedded some controls, but certain things are universal. You do not leave custody with anybody. The custody must be under your control, and there are very simple ways. They are USB type devices, either Trezor or Ledger, that you can actually download the crypto under your control and never have to trust anybody to look after your money. And let's also say the truth, which is people trust banks? Really? How many times have you seen banks failing? Because I can assure you, as an ex-auditor of a bank, if there is collusion inside, you are never going to be able to pick up if there's fraud. And the regulators cannot pick it up. Like they didn't pick it up VBS because there was corruption completely inside of the bank. Even the auditors were in cahoots. So people, can we stop relying on intermediaries and these trusted third parties when you can do this on your own?
But I mean, the question still is, Monica, I think the whole ecosystem and everyone that's passionate about this technology can see what it can do. Is just waiting for adoption. And adoption is going to also promote the decentralization. When is that going to happen? What are your feelings on where we are in this industry and in this evolution?
Okay, two things. One, I always say this is gradual, and then sudden. And then you'll wake up and think, what happened here? I didn't know this was happening. Because I can assure you, consensus is building all the time the infrastructure. And the most incredible thing about this infrastructure, which is for me, I can't believe it when I see this, is that it's all open source. Do you know that we open source MetaMask? We open source Consensus Academy. We now be decentralizing our Infura product. Everything is about getting the collective conscience of all the people around the world that are building to build together. Do you know what it does? Do you know the whole concept in DeFi is composability? What does it mean? You can take one protocol and another and combine it and create new products. Just imagine that now, never in the history of financial markets, do you know the code at Straight, the company I created, is locked in a safe. And the code in DeFi is open source for everybody to use and to copy and to replicate and to improve. So that's the building part that is taking place as we speak at a fascinating rate. And then the users are going to start coming because you know how it is. It's FOMO. When I created Straight, there was only one company that wanted to go into the dematerialized entities. And when 10 came, then everybody wanted to come. So that's why I'm talking to you about. Just be aware, gradual, and then sudden. And also use the example of Web 2. Web 2.0, social media, all these apps, they started in the year 2000, blah, 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 after the internet collapse. And then nothing happened. And now look at them. They dominate our lives. So this is what I predict is going to happen. And that's why the sooner we start explaining to the younger generations, I've given up on the baby boomers. I truly have. Because every time I present to a boomer, they said, I'll be retired before this comes into being. I said, okay, fine. You retire. I'll talk to the younger generation. So really, no, it's true. They totally write this off. You know why? Because they're lazy. Because they don't want to learn new things. Because it's true. This required a lot of learning. I've been studying this for 6 years. It takes me minimum 2 hours a day to read the papers, to read the press, to read all the material that is available. And the last thing I want to say, people, you don't need to go to university to learn this. Everything is available for free in the internet. So the only thing that it requires is commitment and discipline to learn how to use this technology. That's it.
Yeah. You're right about the boomers, by the way. I'm going to get into trouble for that one. But you're so right about it.
I'm one of them, but I don't look like one.
Neither do we.
One of the reasons that CBVC expanded into Africa was because of the use cases, because of the utility of blockchain and how it can transform an emerging market like Africa. And on the back of that, it can transform some of the problems that we have, specifically around fraud and corruption. Monica, maybe you can talk to one or two use cases there. And when do you think this will come into fruition? Because it is very difficult to convert government into starting to promote, endorse, and to even build Web3 applications. Think about track and traceability, procurement applications. A lot of the fraudulent transactions that we have in South Africa and corruption is because of poor procurement.
Yeah,
right?
but why would half these thieves want to do it?
That's the question.
You see, I mean,
That's the
how?
question.
If it's traceable, then I can't take my brown paper bag for car power ships on the thing. How am I going to do that? And I think this is the problem. The feeding trough. And I'm gonna, sorry, Monica. I just want to. I've been in media for so long, and this is just one of my biggest bugbears. Everybody talks about let's get rid of corruption. You need to get the right leadership in place to be able.
Well, there's an opportunity for emerging leaders, right? For opposition parties to actually say, if we come into power, we are going to implement these things. We're going to implement this technology that can transform the continent. All that capital that we lose to fraud and corruption. Can you imagine that was funneled into development or education, even just one industry or one vertical? It would transform the continent.
Absolutely. I give you the truth example, and I only speak the truth, and I don't care if anybody gets upset about this. But for a whole year, Consensus worked for free to put together 2 proposals for the government in South Africa. One is let's put in the blockchain all the assets, the land, the buildings, the leases that are owned by the government. You put it in the blockchain, it becomes completely transparent as to what it's owned and what is being used for, who is renting these properties, and are the leases being recovered. Okay, that was one. Okay, the other one, the whole procurement process of government. Put in the blockchain. Why? Because blockchain gives you provenance, it gives you transparent, it gives you tracking. Guess what? After a whole year, they said they couldn't pay for this, and the cost was negligible. So coming back to your comment, without the political will, we're wasting our time. So the truth is that countries that have seen the light, there have been many, like the UAE, super advanced in adopting blockchain as a philosophical strategy for the country. The laws have been amended, everything. That's why people are emigrating to Dubai, because things are happening there. So unless we embrace this technology holistically, it's going to be a missed opportunity. That's why watch the space what's going to happen in Argentina. It's a mess now, but maybe Milei, maybe a crazy man, but he wants to implement blockchain. So let's see what happens. Maybe it's going to save the country. Who knows?
Well, as Steve Jobs says, it's the crazy ones that make the big difference, right? So
Said.
Yep.
Sorry, I just had to. Anyway,
there's no conspiracies here.
There's no conspiracies at all. We haven't seen Steve. He's been away for a long time.
Monica, it's always amazing chatting to you. Thank you so much for being part of the first episode of Africa's Blockchain Breakdown. You'll definitely be on again, and thank you so much.
Can't wait to hear your wise words again, Monica. Thank you.
We are going to move over to another very inspiring individual who is our and my CEO, Matthias Rook of CVVC. We're going to move over to our Viewers Corner. Matthias, it's awesome to have you on the first episode of Africa's Blockchain Breakdown. There's a lot been going on in the industry in the last year, a lot that's been happening for CVVC and CV Labs here in Africa. We have most recently been working with members of Parliament and other key stakeholders in the industry to put together a position paper to essentially change regulation for the better within the blockchain space in South Africa. Next week, we'll be moving into those public consultations, of which we will have 4. Anyone is invited to join that wants to contribute to finalizing this draft to improve the regulations and instill some regulations with regards to blockchain and crypto in Africa. But Matthias, none of this is new to you. It looks like we're following a path that CVVC did in its early days. CVVC, of course, is one of the founding fathers of the Crypto Valley, and the Crypto Valley is what it is, arguably because of our organization, amongst other things, and the regulatory environment. Maybe you can talk us through the journey of Crypto Valley and what you experienced a couple of years ago that arguably we are experiencing now?
Sure. Thanks for putting this show together. It's awesome to be talking to you guys here from Zug Crypto Valley, which is often referred to the heart of the Crypto Valley, right? So it goes back to 2013. That was the year when the founders of Ethereum moved to Zug. And so they were actually looking at jurisdictions. So they had their vision and about Ethereum and everything, this blockchain protocol of the second generation. And they were looking for a jurisdiction for a framework and a place to be able to launch that really revolutionary idea. And so they came here, they settled down, they rented an apartment, and they actually really developed and finished the product here and launched it. And it took a few years until, it got really some sort of an adoption, like really early adoption here in Switzerland, which was, I would say, around 2016, 17. And but that wasn't the first time when the government, the authorities, or the Swiss regulator took notice of that technology. It also goes back to, I think, 2014. And this was when one of the members of the parliament here in Switzerland asked the question. So you can, Switzerland has a very old democracy, so you can really address many, many topics directly. So a member of the parliament was asking, how do you treat, to the federal government, how do you treat digital money, digital currency? And it was clear he was referring to Bitcoin, because Bitcoin was becoming a thing. And the answer that came back after a couple of weeks or a month was, well, we treat it like foreign currency, right? Which, from a tax perspective, was a very good answer, because that is treated favorably here in Switzerland. And this went on. And just to give you a fast breakdown, it was basically when this explosion of creativity and entrepreneurship happened in the space here in Switzerland, in Zug initially in 2016, which means like hundreds, if not thousands of projects came here from all over the world. They started their companies, they raised money, and that's when the Swiss regulators took notice of that, because it was so much money that flew into Switzerland, right? And what they basically were saying, listen, we don't see a problem with what you guys are doing, as long as you comply with the legal framework. And what they did is they started to classify and to categorize the different sorts of tokens that were used at the time. I think Switzerland introduced this categorization of the three tokens, the payment, the asset tokens, and the utility tokens, so that when you qualify for one of these, you could really go through a table or something. This is the set of rules and regulations that you need to comply with. So it was pretty easy at the time, right? And then, what happened, and I think that what makes Switzerland quite unique is we've had two members of the federal government, two federal councillors, the finance minister and the minister of economics. They would in public speak about this opportunity for Switzerland. So they were very outspoken and said, we understand this great opportunity for Switzerland. One of them even coined the term crypto nation Switzerland. So, there was like an atmosphere. You're welcome. Come here, build, whatever great idea you have in mind. They published a report. They said, this is how we are going to address that from a regulatory perspective. And, I've read this report twice. It was quite comprehensive and very technical, very legal also. But you could see there is know-how in this government body. Our goal, the industry's goal, was to prevent dumb regulation, because that can kill off innovation. This industry is so agile; they just go wherever the best framework is, right?
Yeah.
And then a couple of years later, I think in 2021, the legal framework was adjusted. Actually, it was just amended a little bit, which paved the way for probably the most progressive regulatory framework in the world.
So just from my side, so you're working, you've got this positioning paper, you're dealing with government. Now, the Swiss, the council, progressive. I mean, you've pointed to that. It's a different kettle of fish on the other side of the pond. So just give me some insight into what you're hoping to achieve exactly with this positioning paper of yours.
Yeah, I can speak to that. I mean, I won't go into details in terms of what the position paper entails, as the press release is still to come out. It will be today.
Can we break the news?
Or early next week. We're breaking the news that the news is going to be broken. So very exciting. But I just think that you need to put in place certain regulations that can create an ecosystem for these entrepreneurs and these applications and for the asset class to thrive. And I think, we've learned from the best here. Thanks to Matthias and our HQ in Switzerland, they've done that very successfully now. And as CBVC expands into other markets, into other geographies, and works closely with the entire ecosystem, we don't have sort of blinders in the way that we do things, and we focus only on Web3. We're trying to bridge that gap, bring together the corporate environment, the policymakers, government, investors, academia, universities, and create a thriving ecosystem that can improve the economy, but also, just get more entrepreneurs having an environment where they can really succeed and thrive. And that's one of the things that will be an outcome of a successful position paper. And as South Africa has always done, we sort of the benchmark to the rest of Africa. So hopefully, upon this being a success, we'll sort of set the scene for what the rest of Africa should be doing, and other emerging markets and other countries across the globe as well. But it's worked very well in Switzerland. Switzerland is by far, and specifically the Crypto Valley, is by far the most mature ecosystem in the world. Of course, not as big as some other jurisdictions in the US, for example, but by far the most mature.
I mean, what's happening basically is, this is also big business, right? So, our thesis, if you go back into 2016, 17, from our goal was always to be the venture capital investor in the space, right? If you get to see 80, 90% of the global deal flow, so all the projects come to Switzerland and you employ a systematic investment approach, you're going to have the next Google in your basket at some point in time, right? So of course, other jurisdictions, other countries, everywhere smart people, right? They're going to catch up, and they did catch up, right? So if you look at what's happening and the potential of this technology, I myself call blockchain the power shift technology. It's much more than just technology, because it can transform societies, countries. You were talking about fraudulent activities before, and the problems of many countries in Africa. This can change the world, right?
Yes.
And preparing yourself, to the next version of capital markets or financial markets, the financial market industry can be very crucial for an economy, for a country, and to create growth for decades, right? So, these countries have caught up, and I think it's just smart, and it should be on your to-do list if you are a government representative to take a look at what's happening.
To that point, Matthias, the one thing I love about Africa is the fact that we've got so many problems, right? And if we can find good ways of fixing those problems at a low cost base, the sort of disruption that you could bring to the rest of the world, leapfrogging, traditional technologies, a lot of people don't get this. And it's good to see that CBVC sees that, right? And one example is electricity. You would have heard about this in South Africa. Every now and then, as a matter of fact, more often than that, we have load shedding. So not everybody can afford, though, to buy solar installations. They're quite expensive. And there's a company called Suncash that we're obviously going to interview at some stage. And what they've done, how do you take a solar panel, which is illiquid, and how do you create liquidity there? And essentially what they've done is just sliced it up into blocks, and anybody around the world can buy a solar part of a solar panel, and you also get your returns on that. And what they've managed to do, and what I love about what they're doing, is they use that technology mainly for institutions that cannot afford to, schools, institutions in townships where, it's really poor and people don't have the liquidity to buy it. So there are real use cases that I think one needs to trumpet and say, you know what, if they can do it, we can apply this to many other scenarios where we've got massive challenges. And by default, I think we'll have great adoption because you're fixing a real problem.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, you were saying that's why you love Africa, because you have real problems. And I would say we love Africa because I think you can teach us how to solve real problems, right? Because you're completely right. Yeah. We don't have any problems here. As a matter of fact, we're creating problems so we have something to do. I'm talking about Switzerland, first world country. So it's and that's why Africa and these use cases and it's linked to the mindset of the people. It's linked to the way you address challenges. How challenges suddenly turn into opportunities. I mean, we're so spoiled here. We don't have real challenges, So you end up with, Switzerland, I think was awarded for the 14th consecutive time the most innovative country in the world. I mean, what's there to do? We're innovative anyway. So best schools, and we have a legal framework for everything. Everything works fine. And that's very dangerous, and especially also in this sector, in this industry that we are in, where you have countries that have smart people as well. They are from a size perspective, they have a bit more smart people than we have, just because of the size of Switzerland, right? So they're going to take over the world because they're tech savvy, they're young. Africa, what's the average age of Africa, Gideon?
19 million.
Yeah. 19. Yeah. I think Switzerland, I don't know what it is, what probably 50 or so, right? Yeah. I mean, this is really teaching us, this experience that we are having with Africa is teaching us where it's going to go, right? And it's probably not going to go to those, saturated industries like many of the Western world countries are.
Absolutely. Well, I think, Matthias, I just want to thank you for joining. I've heard a lot about you, by the way. So to see you and to have this conversation with you is a real honor from my perspective. And I really want to thank you for joining us in this inaugural show of ours. Of course, I mean, CVVC, I've worked with a lot of other people, and you guys are very proactive. We talk about things. Oh, it's a good idea. Well, let's do it. And you do it. And that is how we get things done. And I really love it. So appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks, Matthias. Thanks for being part of the first episode of Africa's Blockchain Breakdown. Many more to come. Thanks, Matthias.
And thanks to everybody who's joined us today. And this is just the start. There's more to come. And we'll also create a platform that will allow you, or at least a channel that will allow you to engage with us and for you to share what you would like to see on this channel as well. I'd like to make it as interactive as possible.
Yes, 100%, Kino. And of course, anything that we talk about, we'll mention it in the description of wherever you are viewing this, whether it's X or YouTube or LinkedIn. We'll either put it in the description or the comment. For example, the position paper that we've been speaking about, as soon as the press release comes out, we will add it to the description of wherever you are seeing this show.
Some of us still call it Twitter, but anyway.
That was the first time I called it X.
Sounded good. Anyway, we'll see you on the flip side of this. And remember, there's a lot to talk about because there's lots of good people doing really good stuff in Africa.
Thanks, everybody. Ciao.
Cheers.